I thought it would be good just to quickly start off by allowing Shen to talk a little bit about FoodFutureCo, which I'm very familiar with, but some of you may not. So Shen, maybe you could talk very briefly about what FoodFutureCo is and why it's something you're very passionate about.
Well, FoodFutureCo is Manhattan, New York City-based food accelerator with now impact-only fund attached to investing in the companies that graduate from FoodFutureCo in multiple states. That's the technical part of what it is. But basically, I'm a lifelong social activist since radical student protester back in China, 30 years ago, before some of you were born. But, so I've been through major but failed large-scale movement, and the reason I'm here is because I have 3 children, young children. They grew up in New York City. You may or may not be surprised that actually even with the fortune and the luck we have, with the resource we have, it's very hard to feed them clean food. And as a foodie and someone is mindful about what we put into our body and our children's body, and that's how I find this tremendous, challenging problem and also a major opportunity, which is that agriculture and food is not only related but central to not just health but and environment and taste and tradition and culture, but essential to climate, to the future of our society, of humankind, and to this planet. So, but fortunately, what I realized that about 10 years ago, a group of friends of mine and I realized that we're in a better situation compared to some major protest movement like Democracy for China or Occupy Wall Street. In a better situation in changing food because millennials led this shift toward demanding healthier and more traceable food. So it's a kind of demand-driven but supply-constrained situation, right? We can really, so basically millennial made food the new black, make it really fashionable, right? And so which gave change makers an opportunity that this time we just need to really build good solutions. We don't necessarily have to protest or preach or even change policies. That would be nice, and it would be great to see some of the mayors yesterday making those pledges and making real changes from the policy side. But we can build really scalable businesses that just makes the current system obsolete. So that's why a business accelerator and a patient impact-focused multi-stage capital will really make a difference this time. And for me, that after all this major failed movement, this for the first time, I'm in a happy movement. Food makes people happy and brings people together. So hopefully this will be a happy and successful movement that will make the world a better place.
Great. Just curious to get a sense of the audience. How many people in the audience today are actively working either for or founded a company that is food related? Okay, decent number. And any folks who are actively investing in this space, particularly in early stage companies? Okay, a few. Okay, good. So, Shen, I think the accelerator model is a really interesting one because you really get to see companies at a very, very early stage and effectively mold them to a degree to help set them on a course for success. What are some of the things that you're telling these young companies at this stage to help them marry both the need to succeed and make money and keep a very firm eye on these global challenges that we have and making sustainability a net positive both in the revenue category and for social purposes?
Well, the first thing I tell them is not to do it. A startup is incredibly hard, but in agriculture and food space, fortunately, as I just started to mention that there is a real cultural shift, there's a real behavioral shift, led by millennial, but fortunately not only limited to that particular age group and demographics. And it's become a mainstream awareness that the sorry state of where we are now, what we put in our body. Basically, I don't know how to say it politically correctly, but we don't have a shortage of food. We have oversupply of empty calories full of chemicals and with very little nutrients and macronutrients and negligible really, and full of chemicals. That's why the richest countries in the world, industrial West and the United States, North America, have majority of the population, how do I put it, overweight, basically fat, sick, and hungry. So it's a major opportunity that we can make impact and create value. So as far as working with entrepreneurs in our model, which is the business acceleration and venture capital investing, impact venture capital investing in them, the one thing our teams focus on more than anything else is really execution. You know, you got to focus on laser beam focus on the business model and the addressable market and the problem you're solving. And but in terms of balancing impact and making money, basically building business as force for good, is again, this is a very uniquely positioned situation where the opportunity in value creation is actually in impact,
right?
Making food better and
right.
making the agriculture more regenerative. Yeah.
Right, okay. So are you noticing nowadays that there are more companies to choose from to enter into your accelerator that are focusing on having a social impact than before? And if so, are there certain characteristics to these companies that might be informative for our audience to give them possibly some ideas or some inspiration to possibly do their own homework when they leave the room today to start learning more about this?
Yeah, well, not only there's such a I wouldn't say oversupply. We need more, but there's really a lot of entrepreneurial energy in this space, actually in all disruptive spaces, not just technology. But what's most interesting in agriculture and food in the last 5 years since we've dedicated our energy and resources in this space is that it's not so much agriculture tech or food tech, but it's really food and healthy soil as they are, meaning that it's not just an app or a better machine, better device, the Internet of Things. It's this holistic understanding about, it's all about water and soil, and then how you grow things, how you get nutrition, not just nutrition density and various kinds of protein, but also doing so in a way that is regenerative for the water, the soil, the health of human body. That, you know, when you preserve and prepare instead of process what's grown and then put in our body, but also it's better for the planet and therefore the future and our children, right? So that's the most interesting and surprising good trends that I didn't expect to take off so quickly. In other words, that
sort of this like free from space or the better from you space where you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. It's a return to basics, which is good farming, good practices, healthier eating, less chemicals, less processed foods, you know, less meat and dairy, you know, more plant-rich, nutrient-dense diets. Is that right?
Yes, and no, that's a great summary. I should interview you. So I mean, you think about it. I was a tech investor for more than a decade. I founded a few companies. I was lucky enough to have multiple exits. That's how usually the first generation entrepreneurs become investors. And I was terrible at it for a while, and then learned the hard way. But you can imagine, you know, my natural habitats are Silicon Valley type of high growth, usually high tech investors, right? So for a while, I had difficulty explaining to people, to my fellow investors, what I'm doing. You know, and basically, I was, you know, so Shen was building this and that and media tech, and then now he's selling bananas and eggs, right? So what is the advantage? What is the growth model here? So what comes to us eventually become our core thesis is what Michael just summarizes, is that, and I remember vividly this one moment, this pivotal moment, similar to this, but it's off-the-grid conference where the best minds in Silicon Valley, the smartest people in the world, if you ask them, they'll tell you they are. And I mean, they're the founders of the best companies in Silicon Valley. And I, you know, again, I'm there to explain myself, right? So I had this conversation with a you know, legendary founder of the major U.S. technology company. I said, look, and that's when I find this formulation, right? So if you have, in Silicon Valley, talking about A/B testing, right? So if you have system A that is the height of science and technology, which is computational, right? The Moore's law, everything become cheaper and twice as fast every couple of years. And B, you have ecological, biological, and cultural, particularly in which I mean culinary tradition, right? Which of the two systems are smarter? Forget about whether it's better for the environment and better for culture and more holistic, more community-based. Just forget about it. Which one is smarter, right? So now, being the smartest mind in Silicon Valley, everybody said, Shen, of course biological, ecological wins. I said, Your Honor, I rest my case. So all I'm trying to say is that the return to the understanding and appreciation of the biodiversity and the resilience of nature, our forest, our ocean, our rivers, the moisture and water in healthy soil, and return to recognize, like in the protein space, plant-based solution, recognize that, for example, the Buddhists have done this for a couple of thousand years. They got something right, right? So instead of more processing, more science, we have such a rich and smarter systems that's in our culture, Southern Europe, Asia, everywhere, and in nature. So all we have to do is not to play God anymore. We use science and technology to leverage resilience of those two complex systems. We can recover what we destroyed in the last half century in no time.
So,
wow, that we applaud to nature and to culture.
Good, you're all still awake. Okay, great. So, let's get back onto trends, because to me, one of the things that's been most exciting. So I actually didn't introduce myself. So I write a food sustainability column for Forbes, sort of as personal passion. I also do sustainable and impact investing for private clients. And one of the things that's seemed to me to just be really amazing is the explosive interest in sustainable food, and both from a business perspective and, most importantly, which is actually driving the business perspective, is consumers. Consumers, either through the internet and through more information, are demanding better products. And I'm curious to get your take on how that's influencing your decision-making, both as an investor and in the incubation space, in a way that would be interesting for the folks here, to give people a better sense on maybe the direction that we're heading. Is this a sustainable trajectory where we're going to continue to see more and more demand for these types of products, and thus, this is not a fad and this is going to become sort of the new reality? Or am I wrong, and is this going to be a bit more of a flash in the pan, and 10 years from now we're all still going to be sort of consuming ramen noodles for dinner?
Well, technically, in disruptive space, when you look at a change in a major pivot in behavior or in market share, however you measure in the macro economic or cultural space, usually the pivoting point is 15%, right? So if you use that, in other words, so when e-commerce is a little bit more special, but when it crossed 10%, 12, 15%, it's here to stay, right?
Meaning like as a percentage of overall sales?
In terms of, market
presence.
Share. Yeah,
Okay.
It could be measured by sales or categories or channels and so on, right? So if you look at at least Industrial West, and this is strange to talk about this in Europe because there's a mixture of defending and a disappearing tradition and expansion of factory farming and industrial food. By the same time, the third countertrend to that is it's a regeneration of sustainable farming and healthy food. So there's all three things going on, where in North America it's basically the second and third. The industrial agriculture, industrial food is. So if you look at the market that way, produce is about 12%, 13%, right? So we're at that point of no return. But meat, which is relevant for this topic, is about 0.5%. In other words, 95% of meat.
Yeah.
99.5% of meat in the U.S. I wouldn't feed my children if I care about their health, right? So it's factory farming and not their animal rights issues and all that. So I think that's a very technical approach to look at it, right? But I think this is not a fad. It's a major multifaceted, multi-trend movement. Again, because of the cultural shift already took place. So we just need to build. I mean, it's not like you probably know this Hollywood movie called Field of Dreams. If you build it, they may come, right?
Right.
They already came. They read the labels. They don't. They still like a novel. Half of it you don't understand. They read it, right? I mean, we all do, right? So I think it's here to stay.
So the industry more or less is actually playing catch up to the demand that already exists.
Yeah, it's
because
supply constrained. Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of people in the audience, and I found this myself, particularly if you're on the road or you're at a hotel or even in your own neighborhood, you can want to eat well and still have a difficult time finding the products that allow you to do that. And that is a frustration that I'd love to maybe get your take on is, when do you think we're going to get to a point where it's going to be easy, let's just say within the developing world for now, or the developed world, sorry, where people are going to be able to go into a Tesco or something along those lines and have a very easy time eating, more or less organic, largely plant-based, free from type products that also taste delicious and are going to be at a decent price point.
Well, I mean, you got again, if you follow the disruptive model, the general time frame and the general frame to look at the crystal ball future is I'm Chinese. I know exactly how future looks like. I can do fortune telling, and I would say anywhere between 20 to 50 years. So I think it's more on the shorter end again, because of the cultural shift happened first. So but at the same time, do we have 20 years? So we're at ChangeNOW at a Climate Week. I just came from a number of events from UNGA, General Assembly, United Nations in New York City. Is that you look at food? The encouraging thing about agriculture and food is that as a category, not even counting refrigeration, just food waste, plant-based solution, and all the core food agriculture categories, it has twice the impact compared to clean energy. In other words, if we do this right, we can make the environment better. We can sink carbon twice as much as clean energy, right?
Right.
But at the same time, if we don't, because it's not as a mainstream awareness yet in terms of policy change. If we don't, even if we have, right now we're roughly about 24-25% clean energy in the world, which is great, right? 20 years real effort, that's a good example of success, right? We should applaud to that, right? Clean energy, right? Yeah. But that means 75% is still bad, right? But you look at food and agriculture, it's still barely making to the agenda. I'm not even sure how many presidential elections around the world that make food part of their platform.
Right.
So we may not. We're kind of beyond the 11th hour. We may not even have time if we don't do it right. We may not have Earth to work with.
Right.
So there's a real urgency there. But hopefully, this behavior shift will be the tidal wave to carry this forward.
I'm really glad Shen brought that up because, for me, one of the things that drew me to food is that, there's so many problems in the world that can basically bog us down on a day-to-day basis. You open your internet browser and it's just depression city all over the place. And there's very little that a lot of us can do about it. But with food, we all eat 3 times a day, and we can vote every time to eat in a way that's going to not only be great for us, but it will allow our planet to heal itself, as Shen said, in time. Because it's easy to sound alarmist, but we really are running out of time. I think we have about 60 years left of soil, based on the current rate that we're going.
60 harvests left in Earth.
Where we just won't be able to grow food anymore because the soil will no longer have enough nutritional density to actually grow food.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. So,
But the good news is that nature is so resilient. So if we just give it a chance for the earthworm to come back, for the microbiomes to come back into our guts, into the soil, and then one frontier areas will be into the oceans and waters. Nature will just, like it did to the entire mankind and all the living things on Earth, will just recover itself very quickly.
Right.
So there's a silver lining to that.
Indeed. So the thing that's important to remember to that silver lining is it can recover whether we're here or not. So we should choose to have it recover while we're on this planet because it'll recover if we're gone either way.
And then to Michael's last point, food is absolute, the most ultimate direct democracy. Where you put your dollar, you go buy from the CSAs, the Community Supported Agriculture. Find a local food economy you can plug in. In Europe, you're still enriched with this strong tradition of farmers market.
Right.
Which U.S. is very, very quickly developing. Right. So there is a very direct way. grow your own food, even a little bit, even a window garden. As soon as you touch food and cook food, 90% problem will be gone.